Hangil wiped the sweat from his forehead as he worked in his small workshop on Neo-Sol Space Station. The steady sound of his hammer hitting metal filled the room. Outside his window, spaceships flew past like bright stars in the night sky. The year was 2457, and Hangil was the best metalsmith in this part of space. His workshop was filled with tools, both old and new. He liked using his hands to shape metal, just like the smiths of Earth did thousands of years ago. But he also had modern tools that could scan metals and tell him what they were made of. As he finished working on a broken spaceship part, someone knocked on his door. "We're closed," he called out, but the knocking continued. With a sigh, he put down his tools and opened the door. A woman stood there, wrapped in a dark blue space coat. Her face was half hidden by a hood, but Hangil could see she was beautiful. "Are you Master Smith Hangil?" she asked in a quiet voice. "Yes, that's me," he answered. "But like I said, we're closed." The woman, Songme, as she would later introduce herself, pulled something from her coat. It was a chain, about as long as Hangil's arm. But this was no ordinary chain. It glowed with a faint blue light, and when she held it out to him, he felt a strange warmth coming from it. "I can pay you well," Songme said, placing a bag of credits on his workbench. "I need to know what this chain is made of." Hangil picked up the chain carefully. In all his years working with metals, he had never seen anything like it. The links were covered in tiny writing he didn't recognize, and the metal itself seemed to pulse with energy. He took the chain to his scanner. The machine hummed and beeped, but then showed an error message. "Unknown material," it said. Hangil frowned. His scanner could identify every metal known to humans. "Where did you get this?" he asked Songme. She pulled back her hood, revealing long black hair tied in a neat braid. "I found it in an old temple on Mars. The writings mentioned something about binding a great power." Hangil looked closer at the chain. Under his workshop lights, he could see that some links were slightly broken. As he touched one of these damaged parts, a spark of blue energy jumped to his finger. He jumped back, surprised. "The chain is dying," Songme said. "The power that keeps it together is failing. And when it fails completely..." She didn't finish her sentence. Hangil sat down at his workbench, still holding the chain. He knew he should tell Songme to leave, to take her strange chain somewhere else. But something about it called to him. As a smith, he had always believed that metal held secrets, stories of the past. This chain seemed to hold the biggest secret of all. "I'll help you," he said finally, "but I need time to study it properly." Songme nodded. "Time is something we don't have much of," she said. "The chain's power is fading faster each day, and there are others looking for it." As if to prove her point, a distant explosion shook the space station. Emergency alarms began to sound. Songme looked at the door, fear showing in her eyes for the first time. "They're here," she whispered. "We need to leave. Now." Hangil quickly packed his most important tools and the chain into a bag. He had no idea who they were, but the fear in Songme's voice told him everything he needed to know. As they rushed out of his workshop, he took one last look at the place he had called home for the past 10 years. Little did he know, this was the last time he would see his workshop. The chain in his bag pulsed with energy, like a heartbeat getting stronger. His life as a simple smith was over. A new adventure was about to begin. Hangil and Songme's small spacecraft moved quietly through the darkness of space. They had escaped Neo-Sol Station just before mysterious ships arrived. Now they were heading toward an asteroid called Kepler 789, following the strange energy coming from the chain. The chain glowed brighter as they got closer to the asteroid. Hangil had spent the 6-hour journey studying it. He discovered that when he touched certain links, they showed him images in his mind. They were quick flashes, a huge creature, a dark prison, and scared faces of people from long ago. "We're getting close," Songme said from the pilot's seat. She pointed at the asteroid through the front window. It was huge, bigger than most space stations. Its surface was covered in old mining equipment and abandoned buildings. They landed near what looked like an entrance to the mines. The air was thin but breathable. Han Gil put on his light spacesuit and made sure the chain was secure in his bag. Sommet checked her weapon, a standard plasma pistol. "The signal is strongest underground," Han Gil said, looking at his scanner. The chain was pulling him toward a dark tunnel that went deep into the asteroid. They walked carefully through the tunnel. Their lights showed old rail tracks and mining carts, left behind many years ago. But something was strange. Some walls weren't rough like normal mine walls. They were smooth and covered in the same kind of writing that was on the chain. After walking for an hour, they reached a huge metal door. It was as tall as 5 people standing on top of each other. The door had a square panel in the middle, about the size of the chain. "This is it," Sommet whispered. Her voice shook a little. "The prison chamber." Han Gil took out the chain. As soon as he held it near the door, the chain's blue light grew very bright. The writing on the walls started to glow too. He pressed the chain against the panel, and the huge door slowly opened with a loud grinding sound. What they saw inside made them both stop breathing for a moment. The chamber was enormous, like a cathedral carved out of rock. Blue lights ran along the walls in patterns, but what caught their attention was in the center of the room. Floating in a beam of light was a creature that could only be described as a dragon. It was at least 50 meters long, with scales that looked like they were made of starlight. Its wings were folded around its body, held tight by more chains like the one Han Gil carried. The dragon's eyes were closed, but Han Gil could tell it was alive. He could feel its slow heartbeat through the chain in his hands. "This is Du Hyun," Sommet said softly, "the last guardian. My people have passed down stories about him for generations. He was imprisoned here 500 years ago by those who feared his power to unite different species." Han Gil walked closer to the dragon. The chain in his hands pulled stronger now, wanting to join its fellows that held the great creature. But Han Gil held it tight. He was a smith, someone who made things and fixed them. Looking at the dragon bound in chains made his heart hurt. "We're not here to keep him prisoner," Han Gil said firmly. "We're here to free him." Suddenly, lights flashed red around the chamber. A loud alarm started ringing. Sommet grabbed Han Gil's arm. "The facility's security systems," she said urgently. "They've detected us. We don't have much time." Han Gil looked up at the dragon's peaceful face. He knew that once they started breaking the chains, there would be no going back. But he also knew it was the right thing to do. He pulled out his tools and stepped forward. It was time to do what he did best, work with metal. But this time, he wouldn't be fixing chains. He would be breaking them. Han Gil worked quickly as the alarms continued to sound through the chamber. He examined the chains that held Du Hyun, the alien dragon. Each link was made of the same strange metal as the chain he carried, but these were much larger. Sommet stood guard at the entrance, her weapon ready. "How long will it take?" she asked, looking nervously at the door. "These chains are complex," Han Gil replied. He held up his scanner to one of the links. "They're not just physical restraints. They're connected to Du Hyun's mind somehow." The dragon remained still, floating in the beam of light. Its scales shifted colors like oil on water. Han Gil could feel its presence more strongly now, like a sleeping giant about to wake up. He took out his tools and began working on the first chain. The metal was harder than anything he had ever worked with before. Regular tools would not cut it, but Han Gil had brought something special, a plasma cutter he had modified himself. As he started cutting the first link, blue energy sparked from the chain. Images flooded his mind. He saw Du Hyun flying through space, visiting different worlds. He saw the dragon teaching ancient peoples about the stars. Then he saw the day they trapped him here. The people who imprisoned him, Han Gil said as he worked, they were afraid of something, not just his power, but his knowledge. Song-mi nodded. The stories say he knew secrets about traveling between stars, ways to bring different species together. But some wanted to keep those secrets for themselves. The first chain broke with a sound like thunder. Energy rushed through the chamber, making their hair stand on end. Do-hyun's massive body twitched slightly. Han-gil moved to the next chain. Each one he broke showed him more memories. He saw how Do-hyun had tried to help humans understand the universe better. The dragon had never wanted to rule or control, only to teach and protect. Suddenly, Song-mi shouted, "They're coming. I can hear them in the tunnels." Han-gil worked faster. 4 chains were broken now, but 3 still held the dragon. The memories were coming stronger. He felt Do-hyun's sadness at being betrayed, his long years of sleep, and his hope that someone would understand the truth. The door to the chamber shook. Someone was trying to get in. Song-mi aimed her weapon at the entrance. "Almost done," Han-gil said. His hands were steady as he cut through the 5th chain. He was a smith, and this was what he was meant to do: break the bonds that should never have been made. The 6th chain fell away. Now only one remained, but this one was different. It wrapped around Do-hyun's head, glowing brighter than the others. "This is it," Han-gil said, "the one keeping him asleep." The door burst open. Armed figures in black armor rushed in. Their leader stepped forward, wearing a commander's uniform. "Step away from the dragon," the commander ordered. "You don't understand what you're doing." Han-gil looked up at Do-hyun's peaceful face. "I understand perfectly," he said. "I understand that keeping knowledge locked away out of fear is wrong." He raised his plasma cutter to the final chain. The armed figures raised their weapons. "If you break that chain," the commander warned, "you'll release something you can't control." Han-gil smiled. "Maybe we shouldn't try to control it. Maybe we should try to understand it instead." With those words, he cut through the last chain. The chamber filled with brilliant blue light. Above him, Do-hyun's eyes began to open for the first time in 500 years. The chamber filled with light as Do-hyun opened his ancient eyes. They glowed like distant stars, a deep blue that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. The dragon's massive body slowly unfolded, his wings stretching out to touch the chamber walls. Everyone in the room stood still, watching in silence. The armed guards lowered their weapons, too amazed to maintain their aim. Han-gil remained where he was, looking up at the creature he had freed. Song-mi knelt, showing respect to the ancient being. Do-hyun moved his long neck, turning to look at each person in the chamber. When his eyes met Han-gil's, the smith felt a gentle presence touch his mind. "You broke my chains." Do-hyun's voice echoed in Han-gil's thoughts. It was a calm voice, filled with wisdom and kindness. "You understood their nature. You saw my memories." "Yes," Han-gil replied in his mind. "I saw how they imprisoned you, how they feared your knowledge." The dragon's scales rippled with colors as he slowly descended to the chamber floor. His movements were careful, like someone learning to walk again after a long illness. The broken chains lay scattered around him, no longer glowing. 500 years, Do-hyun said, this time speaking aloud so everyone could hear. His voice filled the chamber like distant thunder. 500 years of sleep, while the galaxy continued without my guidance. The commander stepped forward, though his hands shook slightly. "The Galactic Council ordered you contained. You were deemed too dangerous to teach." Do-hyun interrupted. "To share knowledge that could have helped countless worlds. To bring peace between species who feared each other." The dragon's words made the commander step back. But there was no anger in Do-hyun's voice, only sadness. Han-gil felt more memories flowing from Do-hyun's mind. He saw wonderful things, cities where different species lived together in peace, ships that could travel between stars in moments, and technologies that could heal entire planets. This knowledge was meant to be shared, Do-hyun said, not hidden away in darkness. Song-mi spoke up from where she knelt. "My people remembered. We kept the stories alive, waiting for the right time, the right person." She looked at Hangil. We needed someone who could understand both the physical chains and the reasons they were wrong. The dragon lowered his great head until he was eye to eye with Hangil. A smith, he said warmly. One who creates, who joins things together, who understands that breaking chains can be as important as forging them. Suddenly, alarms began sounding again. The commander's radio crackled with urgent messages. More ships are coming, Song Mai said, checking her scanner. The whole Galactic Council fleet. They must have detected Du Hyun's awakening. The dragon raised his head, looking at the chamber ceiling as if he could see through it to the stars beyond. They still fear, he said quietly. After all this time, they still think knowledge is something to be controlled, not shared. Hangil stepped forward. Then we need to show them they're wrong. Help them understand, like I did when I saw your memories. Du Hyun's eyes sparkled with approval. Yes, he agreed. But first, we must leave this prison. The time for sleep is over. The time for teaching begins again. The dragon's wings began to glow with energy. Hangil felt Du Hyun's mind connect more strongly with his own, sharing knowledge that had been locked away for centuries. Together, they would need to face what was coming and find a way to bring understanding to those who still lived in fear. The asteroid's surface shook as Galactic Council ships entered orbit. Du Hyun led Hangil and Songme through the ancient mining tunnels, his scaled body glowing softly to light their way. The dragon had made himself smaller, about the size of a transport ship, to move through the tunnels. Commander Jai-1 appeared on the communication screens throughout the facility. Her face was stern as she made her announcement. This is a Class 1 security alert. The ancient entity known as Du Hyun has been freed. All personnel must evacuate immediately. This facility will be sealed in 30 minutes. Hangil looked at the screens with concern. They're going to trap us here. No, Du Hyun said calmly. They plan to destroy the asteroid entirely. They would rather eliminate all trace of this place than let its secrets be known. Songmed checked her scanner again. 20 ships in orbit. They're launching hunter units. These are their best warriors, trained specifically to handle powerful beings. The first explosion rocked the tunnel ahead of them. Armed figures in advanced battle suits appeared through the smoke. Their armor was black with glowing red lines, and they carried weapons designed to handle large creatures. Surrender the dragon, the lead hunter commanded. This is your only warning. Du Hyun's voice remained peaceful. I remember your kind. 500 years ago, your ancestors wore similar armor. They too thought force was the answer to their fears. The dragon's scales began to shine brighter. Hangil felt knowledge flowing from Du Hyun's mind again. He saw how the battle suits worked, their weaknesses, their power sources. The dragon wasn't sharing this to hurt them, but to show Hangil why they shouldn't be afraid. Your weapons cannot harm me, Du Hyun said to the hunters. But I do not wish to harm you either. Let us pass, and I will share knowledge that will make such weapons unnecessary. The hunters responded by firing their weapons. Energy beams struck Du Hyun's scales, but they simply absorbed the light like water soaking into sand. The dragon sighed sadly. Then we must show them another way. Du Hyun's eyes glowed brighter. Suddenly, all the hunters' weapons shut down. Their battle suits froze in place. How? One hunter asked in surprise. Your technology comes from the same knowledge I once shared, Du Hyun explained. Knowledge that was twisted into weapons instead of tools for peace, but it still remembers its true purpose. Hangil stepped forward. We're not your enemies. Du Hyun has shown me visions of what's possible if we work together. Please, just listen. More explosions shook the tunnel. Songmi's scanner beeped urgently. We don't have time. The facility's power core is overloading. They're going to destroy everything. Du Hyun spread his wings, filling the tunnel with light. Then we must leave, but not as enemies. The dragon looked at the trapped hunters. You have a choice. Stay and serve those who rule through fear, or come with us, and learn why your ancestors once sought my guidance." To everyone's surprise, 3 of the hunters stepped out of their frozen battle suits. One removed his helmet, revealing a young face filled with wonder rather than fear. "The old stories," the young hunter said. "They told us you were a monster. But I see now they were wrong." Hangil smiled. Together with Songme, the freed hunters, and their ancient guardian, they began making their way to the surface. Above them, Commander Jaiwan's fleet waited, not knowing that their own weapons would soon remind them of their true purpose. The time of hiding knowledge was ending. The time of sharing it was about to begin. The small group reached the asteroid's surface just as the facility began to collapse behind them. Du Hyun spread his wings wide under the starlight, his scales reflecting the glow of nearby ships. Hangil, Songme, and the 3 former hunters stood close to the dragon, watching as Commander Jaiwan's fleet surrounded them. "This is your final warning," Jaiwan's voice boomed from the lead ship. "Surrender the dragon, or we will open fire." Do Hyun lifted his head toward the stars. "Your weapons cannot destroy me," he said calmly, "but they can harm the people with me. Is that truly what you want?" Hangil felt the dragon's thoughts touch his mind again. In that moment, he understood what Du Hyun planned to do. The smith stepped forward, holding up the pieces of the broken chains he had collected. "These chains were made to imprison," Hangil called out to the ships above. "But I am a smith. I can remake them into something new, something that builds trust instead of fear." The former hunters removed their remaining armor. The young one who had spoken earlier stepped forward. "My name is Taiho," he said. "I was trained to hunt beings like Du Hyun. But now I see that everything we were taught was wrong." Song Mai activated a communication device. She sent images to the fleet above, memories that Du Hyun had shared, showing the peaceful worlds he had helped build long ago. Commander Jaiwan's ship moved closer. Her voice came again, but this time with less certainty. "The Council has ordered the dragon's destruction. They say he will reveal secrets that could destroy our civilization." "Knowledge does not destroy," Du Hyun replied. His voice was gentle but reached every ship in the fleet. "It builds, it heals, it unites. Let me show you." The dragon's scales began to shine with a warm golden light. Slowly, he raised his wings. Energy flowed from them, touching each ship in the fleet. But instead of attacking, the energy simply made their engines glow with a new kind of power. "This is how your ships could truly work," Du Hyun explained. "Clean energy that never runs out. Technology that works with the universe instead of fighting against it. This is just one small piece of what I can teach." Hangil held up the chain pieces again. They began to glow in his hands as he understood their true purpose. "These weren't just prison chains," he said. "They were meant to be connections, ways to share knowledge across the stars." Commander Jaiwan's ship landed on the asteroid's surface. When she stepped out, her face showed wonder instead of anger. "The Council told us you were dangerous," she said to Du Hyun. "That your knowledge would upset the balance of power. Perhaps that balance needs to change," Songme suggested. "Perhaps it's time for all species to share knowledge equally." Do Hyun lowered his head to look at Jaiwan directly. "Join us," he offered, "not as hunters and prey, but as students and teacher. Let us build something new together." The commander looked at her fleet, then at the former hunters who stood with Du Hyun. Finally, she looked at Hangil, who was already beginning to reshape the ancient chains into something new. "The Council will not accept this easily," Jaiwan warned. "Then we will help them understand," Du Hyun said. "As Hangil helped me understand that chains can become bridges, as you are now understanding that what you feared most might be your greatest hope." Above them, more ships appeared in the darkness. But these were different, ancient allies of Du Hyun, awakening from their own long sleep. The time of division was ending. The time of unity was about to begin. The space around the asteroid filled with ships from across the galaxy. Du Hyun's ancient allies had arrived. vessels of strange and beautiful designs that humans had never seen before. Their presence made Commander Jaiwan's fleet look small in comparison. Han Gil worked with his tools, reshaping the broken chains. Du Hyun had shown him how to use their special metal to create something new. As he worked, the dragon shared more of his knowledge with everyone present. Long ago, Du Hyun began, his voice carrying to all the ships, "My kind were not just guardians of knowledge. We were bridges between worlds. Our greatest power was not in weapons or technology, but in bringing different species together." The dragon's scales shifted to show images of the past. Everyone watched as stars and planets appear on his body like a living map. They saw how the dragon species had helped younger civilizations grow and learn from each other. "The chains that bound me were made from an ancient metal," Du Hyun continued. "It can store knowledge and share it across great distances. Those who imprisoned me did not understand its true purpose." Han Gil held up his work. The chain pieces now formed a circle of connected links, each glowing with a soft light. "It's ready," he said. Song Me stepped forward. "What is it?" "A key to the stars," Du Hyun explained. "The first of many that will help us share knowledge again. Han Gil's skills as a smith have made it possible." Commander Jaiwan watched carefully. "The council thinks you will share dangerous weapons, ways to destroy worlds." Du Hyun's eyes showed sadness. "Knowledge can always be used for good or evil, but look at what I choose to share first." The dragon touched the circular key with his snout. Suddenly, the space around them changed. Everyone could see new paths between the stars, safe routes that no one had known about before. "These are the true paths through space," Du Hyun said. "Ways to travel that don't damage the fabric of the universe. Routes that will let all species meet and trade safely." Tai Ho, the young former hunter, looked amazed. This would change everything. No more dangerous jumps through space. No more lost ships. Han Gil understood now why his skills as a smith had been so important. The metal wasn't just for making chains or weapons. It was for building connections, both physical and mental. "But this is just the beginning," Du Hyun said. "There is more knowledge to share, ways to heal damaged worlds, methods to grow food on barren planets, technology to clean polluted oceans." Commander Jaiwan's communication device buzzed. The Galactic Council was demanding action, but she turned it off and faced Du Hyun. "The Council fears change," she said. "They fear losing control. But I've seen enough to know their fear is wrong." More ships were arriving, representatives from worlds that had heard Du Hyun was free. The dragon's scales rippled with joy as he recognized old friends and allies. "Now you understand my true power," Du Hyun said to them all. "Not to destroy or control, but to unite, to share, to build bridges between stars and species." Han Gil held the key to the stars high. Its light connected with Du Hyun's scales, creating a network of glowing lines between all the ships present. Through these lines, knowledge began to flow freely for the first time in 500 years. The grand meeting chamber of Neo-Sol Space Station hummed with activity. Representatives from 100 worlds gathered there, drawn by news of Du Hyun's freedom. The dragon floated in the center of the chamber, his scales casting gentle light across the faces of those present. Han Gil stood on a platform near Du Hyun, surrounded by the keys to the stars he had crafted from the ancient chains. Each key now connected to a different world, sharing knowledge that had been hidden for centuries. The Galactic Council's emergency session was displayed on large screens around the chamber. They demanded Du Hyun's immediate containment, claiming he threatened the established order of the galaxy. "We have maintained peace through control," the council leader announced. "This dragon would destroy that peace with dangerous knowledge." Commander Jaiwan stepped forward. During the past week, she had become one of Du Hyun's strongest supporters. "You call it peace," she said to the council, "but it is built on fear and secrets. Let me show you a better way." She nodded to Han Gil. The smith activated the keys to the stars. the chamber filled with flowing lines of light, connecting everyone present. Through these connections, they all felt what Han Gil had experienced when he first touched the chains: understanding, knowledge, and hope. "Feel the truth," Du Hyun said gently. "See how the universe can work when knowledge flows freely." The council members watched in silence as images appeared in the chamber. They saw ships using safe paths through space, saving countless lives. They saw dead worlds becoming green again through shared technology. They saw species that had been enemies for generations learning to work together. Song Mei touched one of the keys, adding her people's long-kept memories to the shared knowledge. "My ancestors preserved the truth about Du Hyun," she said. "Now everyone can know it." Tai Ho and the other former hunters stepped forward. "We were trained to fear and hunt powerful beings," Tai Ho said. "Now we understand our true purpose: to protect knowledge, not destroy it." The council leader's face showed confusion and wonder. "But how can we trust that this power won't be misused?" Han Gil held up the last key he had made. "Because the power isn't in the knowledge itself," he explained. "It's in how we choose to use it. As a smith, I could use my skills to make weapons or tools. I choose to make tools that bring people together." Du Hyun's scales rippled with approval. "The chains that bound me were meant to control," the dragon said. Han Gil remade them into bridges between worlds. That is the choice we all face: to control through fear or to connect through understanding. One by one, the council members began to nod. The old ways of keeping secrets were ending. A new age of shared knowledge was beginning. Han Gil looked around the chamber at all the beings from different worlds. Some looked strange to human eyes, but through the keys to the stars, he could feel their hopes and dreams. They weren't so different after all. "This is just the start," Du Hyun said, his voice filled with joy. "Together, we will explore the stars not as separate species, but as one united galaxy. The time of chains is over. The time of bridges has begun." The dragon spread his wings, filling the chamber with starlight. Above Neo Sol Station, ships from 1,000 worlds gathered in peace, their crews learning and sharing together. The universe was changing, one connection at a time.